Hi everyone, welcome to CCJA Sundays. I'm Camila Vititis, and tonight I'm thrilled to be speaking with drummer Matt Wilson. Hi Matt.
Hey Camila,
Yay.
how are you? Thank you for inviting me. It's so great, and thank you for calling everybody there for having me here this evening. It's
Oh,
such
we're so
a
grateful.
pleasure to visit with you guys, and I love visiting. It's one of my
Yeah.
hobbies. Visit. I love to visit.
How's everything going for you in the times right now?
Yeah, it's cool. I've been the last few days I've been conducting the All-State Kansas Jazz Band, and it's been all virtually and everything. But I set up some very special guests. So we had one of your uh, recent acquisitions to your fine community, Don Clement, speak to
Mhm.
them on Thursday, and I had a former student of mine at the new school. Uh, Colin may be aware of Nick Dunstan, who is now in Berlin, and speak with him today about. He's 24 years old, and just the myriad of activities that he's been doing with his own music, and just the look on these students' face was like, wow. And then I last week I sent a text to my friend, a friend, and I said, hey, would you come on and speak to these guys about your artistry and your music? And within 15 seconds he said, sure, what time? And that was the great Wynton Marsalis. So yesterday we had Wynton Marsalis speak to these young people, and it was unbelievable. I mean, wow. So if I can't get inspired by these past couple of days, plus, in fact, I've been doing these interviews for the new school, one of the fine places that I get to teach, with students from all over the place for not only admission to the new school, but to Manus. And so I have spoken in the last week with people from China, Korea, the Philippines, Italy, about their artistry, not only for what they want to do as artists, but what they want to be as social justice artists, what they want to be in the community. So it's been so inspiring. I can't say enough about what's been going on. So, and then yesterday I also had colleagues of mine work with these young students. Jeff Letter, who arranged this piece, I'll tell a little bit more about it, and Curtis Hasselbring, and another one of your um, great natives of Colorado, Kurt Konefke, work with trumpet players. So it's really inspiring.
So is that all online, but they're playing?
Yeah, it's all online. So you know for myself, it's been a real challenge to figure out how to rehearse this band to play this new work. So I decided if I was going to do something like this online, I want something to be an event.
Mhm.
I don't a concert. That's a word. Uh, I always like to make everything be an event. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, if these young folks have to to kind of go have this experience through this kind of medium, really, let's make this an event. So I had written some themes last fall, kind of what I call new patriotic music. Whatever affiliations anybody has with whatever, that's fine. But I'm saying I think sometimes that as Americans, we have to define who we are as patriots. And sometimes people will define what that is. But,
Mhm.
you know, I've traveled the world. I'm a patriot. I've delivered this message of America to a lot of different places. So I dedicated a work to two movements are to John Lewis and one to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I asked my dear friend and great arranger Jeff Lederer to put these pieces together as one piece. Instead of them having doing repertoire in this kind of setting, okay, it's online. They have to record to a click, the whole thing. If they're going to do something like this, let's have it be a new piece of music,
Mhm.
something that they're invested in, they're part of. I mean, I see the faces like you guys. They're like part of this event, you know. And so this is what we're going to do. So this is this is what we've done. So we've created this new piece. So I think uh, I think it's even more impact that it comes from a group of young folks from Kansas, if I may say. I mean, even though I lived there, I went to school there. I'm very proud of my heritage, my time there. But it's great to see these young people, and man, they're throwing down.
Yeah.
So I've learned how to rehearse these pieces with from section leaders down, rhythm section leaders down. We've learned a whole new way of checking this out. So they're recording. We have 2 more rehearsals. They're recording starting next week, and I think they'll really put this piece together. And I think it's going to make a real impact on their lives too. So Dawn came and spoke to him about her artistry, and Nick, and then Winton yesterday again was just he's he's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote pages of notes down about what he had to say, and so I hope, and I know that I know it made an impact today with Nick, who's playing them some. He's 24 years old. He's not that much older than him. I wanted to present a person that is not much older than they are, that is out really offering some new music and their vision.
Hmm.
So he really presented a whole myriad of his activities. And I saw them just going, wow. I saw the faces. I was like, wow, what they were like, this is amazing. What the possibilities are. And he mentioned something earlier in what he was speaking, that he felt he was lucky. He said, "Oh, I'm lucky have to be." He was a student of mine at the new school, but he
Hmm.
was bringing up luck all the time because Jeff has also used him, Letterer, my good colleague, in a myriad of things too, of possibilities. I said, it's not luck. I said, you create your own good luck.
Hmm.
You create your own good luck by enthusiasm, imagination. Good luck. I never say that to anybody. It's corny. You can say that to anybody. Oh, good luck. What's that mean? 4-leaf clover? Doesn't mean anything. But people that put in the work, people that put in the time and the enthusiasm and the dedication, they create their own good luck.
Hmm.
Everybody on the screen has created their own good luck. So again, interest. So all this combined with these interviews I've done the last week is what I've been really inspired by are people's curiosity
Hmm.
and enthusiasm for wanting to know. What is it? What is it to know? Ideas, ideas. And if you have 12 ideas and 3 come to life, that's a pretty good percentage. If you're if you're in baseball, right? If you get
Yeah.
up to bat, that's pretty damn good. If you get up to bat and you bat 330. So what about this? What about us as musicians? What kind of ideas are we coming about? And some people have ideas. Some people are prophets of those ideas. That's all cool too. You
Mhm.
know, we want to be all of that. So it's fun to see that kind of enthusiasm.
I'd like to hear about what initially in your life sparked your original curiosity for music and for jazz, and maybe what keeps you curious and excited as you continue your career.
I mean, I come from West Central Illinois. It was cornfields. That was what I mean, I wasn't from an urban area. I tell everybody, but check this out. I had a friend in high school. His name was Jay Litchfield, or junior high, and we started listening to this music. And we would get together and listen to records. And he had this record called Max Roach versus Rich. Buddy Rich's and Max Roach. Colin knows this record. They're both on the cover. They face each other. And Gigi Grice did the arrangements. And I remember the day that I heard these recordings. So here we are, these farm kids in Illinois checking this music out. But let me tell you something. Within 1 week, one time, I was 15, he was 16. We saw Clark Terry in Moline or Rock Island, Illinois. We saw with the Augustana College Jazz Band. We saw Dizzy Gillespie with his quartet with Ed Cherry on guitar, Bob Cranshaw, a very young and very happening Tommy Campbell on the drums. And then 3 days later, we drove down to Champaign, Illinois, to hear Oscar Peterson play solo. So I've been a lot of places. I've been in my home area here in New York, and I've gone to do residencies at schools, and the kids will say, "Well, I know there's not a lot going on around here." I'm like, "Really? You're kidding me, right?" the center of this music, or one of the centers of this music, along with Denver and other places, is right down the way. You just have to seek it out. So that energy has to be there. That interest has to be there. And that's, to each his own, but still, I mean, I met Count Basie with my same friend when I was 14, he was 15. And we met Count Basie at a concert.
Wow.
We helped Freddie Green. We were on the stage when Freddie Green was putting the stand fronts away. He signed this little envelope I had for autographs that night. I was like, wow, now. But we met Count Basie, and we said, wow, thank you, Mr. Basie. This concert was so great. He goes, thank you guys, thank you so much. I met Count Basie when I was 14 years old. Might have been 13, but 14 to 15. So in Illinois, West Central Illinois, in the middle of a cornfield. So it's possible everywhere.
Yeah, that's so true. Do you have any like notable influences from when you first started out, and do they still influence your playing today? Do you hear that coming through?
Oh, definitely. Again, being from West Central Illinois, the town, area of I guess a population north of me, 50 miles north, is the Quad Cities. Anybody aware of the Quad Cities? Nobody ever really knows what the Quad Cities is. It could be Moline, Rock Island, Davenport, Bettendorf, whatever. But the great drummer Louis Belson is from that area, and so he was out that way a lot. He would come out and visit, and I have a photograph of him downstairs on the wall in the downstairs bathroom. It should be other places, but it's there. And he signed to me, um, uh, "Thank you to a very good young drummer." So he would always remember my name. He would always ask me if I was practicing. He would always ask me all these things. And here this guy was who was so much joy in the music, you know? And it was an era too in that where I was growing up in the 80s where there was these series of Pablo records that came out. And Pablo was a Norman Granz, if you guys are familiar with Norman Granz productions of of jazz, the Philharmonic, etc. He put out these records during that time, and they'd be these great all-star bands of not only that era but different eras. So like, there's a great one called "How Long Has This Been Going On," which is Sarah Vaughan with Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, Louis Bellson. There's a great Dizzy Gillespie record with with Mickey Roker, Count Basie, and Bob Cranshaw. I mean, these kind of almost what we're doing now with the music is like kind of like different kinds of energies. And so we'd buy these records, and I realized, wow, these guys are really into something else. And Mr. Belson's energy and positivity was such a big part of it. So I'm glad I saw these artists that were happy on stage. I mean, I saw joy. I mean, when I saw Dizzy at that concert, that was amazing. I I met Buddy Rich when I was very young too. The same concert series at this high school somewhere, and I went back to sign an autograph, and he goes, "I said I'd sign him on the bus." I was like, "Ah." And then I went and I had him sign on the bus. He was cool. And years later, I met him again. The last time would hear him before he passed was in Hutchinson, Kansas. I was going to school at Wichita State University, and I saw him, and I went on the bus, and I brought a record called uh, Buddy Rich Sings, and I brought the record on to have him sign. And he looks at the cover, and he shows me the cover, and he goes, "See that picture, kid? That picture should have never happened." I was like terrified. And he goes, "But it's great. I hope you enjoy the record." And he signs it. He was really happy that I had that record more than whatever else. He was like, "Wow, that was cool." So there he is. So I had really good positive experiences with all these kinds of people. So I thought, that's what I really want to do. I said, that's what I saw when I saw Count Basie and he said that, or I saw Dizzy and he said that, and I saw Clark Terry's energy. And even when I saw Miles Davis, the only time on my birthday in 1987, I said, man, that's what I want to do. I want to be that. I want to offer that. So yeah, it was great.
I think you can hear the positivity come through in your music. And especially I wanted to talk about your new 2020 release, Hug. Every
Oh,
time
thank
I
you.
listen to that, it does just kind of uplift you, you know? It's like I would like to hear about maybe how you approach those compositions, and I know the ones you didn't write, what how you chose those tunes, how that project kind of came together.
Thank you, Camila. For something like that, I believe one of the greatest things that we can offer is repertoire. I say this to young people all the time. Find songs that sound in you. You know, my dear friend Ron Miles is on. He's great at that, man. We'll find. He'll. I mean, Ron and I are like. He's one of my brethren of everything. But wow, it could be Duke Ellington, it can be the Partridge Family, it can be Andrew Hill, it can, it's all fine. So, along with writing, so what I did on this record was I have this band and I've had it for a long time. Jeff Lederer, of course, your great Colorado native, Kurt Konefke, and the great Chris Lycap on the bass. And we played a concert at Temple University 2 years ago, I guess. And I have all this stuff going on. I'm going here and going. Great thing about this period is I've slowed down quite a bit. I watched a hawk in my backyard today. We took video. That's another story. But so slowed down. So I was like, oh man, I'm just going here and here. And I brought this band to Temple University. My really good friend Terrell Stafford is in my band Arts and Crafts. Invited me to bring down the band, and he wasn't there that day, but I brought the quartet. So it's Kirk and Jeff and Chris and myself. And we got there and we rehearsed a little bit before a workshop we were doing of some new music. I thought, oh, here's a new tune of mine. Here's a tune of Charlie Hayden's. Here's a tune of Dewey's. Let's just run through these. And we played and then we did this workshop. And Terrell's colleague there and really good friend and you know musical partner Tim Warfield came up to me. He said, "Listen," he pulled me aside. He grabbed me by the shirt actually and pulled me to the side. He goes, "Listen, I'm going to pull the camera." So he goes, "This is not only one of the greatest bands, jazz bands. This is one of the greatest bands out there." I was like, "Oh, sometimes you're not aware of how a band can just take a piece of music and just do this." And so I thought, "Oh man." So I decided, okay, that's one of the next journeys is to document this band. So again, after the Sandberg project and all this other stuff, I thought, okay, it's time to document this band that I've been dealing with for a long time and having. So it was really fun to do that. And great songs of Dewey Redmond, who I played with for many years, Charlie Hayden, who I played with many years, and Sun Ra, and all kinds of things, just to put them together and create a piece of work. So that's how it came about.
When you like sit down to write something, do you have something in mind? Like, do you have a project in mind for who that tune's gonna be for, or is it always kind of just
No, definitely.
adaptable?
No, no, nothing's adaptable. It has to be a, yeah, I'm not, I don't know how everybody else is, but I'm not that kind of person like, oh, I have all these songs, then whatever. It's usually like, okay, Duke Ellington said, there's nothing more uh, uh, inspirational than a deadline. And Cole Porter said, there's nothing more inspirational than a commission. Sometimes you got to like just write some music.
Hmm.
And so, procrastination is probably not a good thing, but sometimes it's really good. And
Hmm.
sometimes, for those that you don't know, I have triplet sons, and they're going to be 20 in April. And I have a daughter who's going to be 23 in a couple weeks. But when they were born, man, my life was chaos. I mean, chaos. And so for me to write any sort of music, I had to do it fast. And I learned how to do it really fast. So I would tell my wife, uh, my late wife, who was an amazing human being, I'd say, um, I'm going to go downstairs and write 5 tunes in 30 minutes. So call me up when it's time to come back up. And I had to get them done. Sometimes you just got to go to work. And
Hmm.
Carla Bley, who's a hero of mine, said, you know what? You can wait for inspiration, or you can go to work,
Mm.
or you can do both. So sometimes it's like, oh, you can walk around and go, oh, I'm hearing this. This is great. And then sometimes you got to go, okay, it's 8:05. I work on compositions from 8:05 until 8:30,
Mhm.
and I work on music. So I like the I like the challenges of both. So
Yeah, that's exactly what Maria Schneider said when I spoke to her back in like September. Annie and I got to chat with her. It was really
yeah,
cool. She was saying like sometimes you just got to get to work and do it.
yeah,
And
that's
I
a call. Yeah, that's
yeah, inspiration still comes out from stuff. It's just maybe not as organic. Or maybe it
yeah.
is. I don't know.
I think it's both. I mean, I don't know. Somebody asked me, "What's your approach?" I have, first of all, I don't really consider myself a composer. I always put a question mark behind it because Mahler was a composer. You know, Duke Ellington was a composer. I'm a songwriter.
Hmm.
I'm a songwriter. I'm not a composer. I write songs. I'm proud of that. I just write little ditties. I write songs. I'm
Do you
not
have like a go-to process? Like if you need to do it fast, like do you start with a melody? Do you start with a rhythmic phrase?
I'm always a melody person. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've been inspired by so many people, people that are Ron. I mean, I've watched Ron. Ron wrote a tune one night at the break at the Green Mill in Chicago at the piano. I mean, I just saw him. He's like there with the score paper, the Ron Miles big score, and that's what he did.
Mhm.
Larry Goldings, great composer. Uh, Jeff Lederer, that's a composer. These people are composers. Me, I'm a songwriter. I'm fine with that. I actually switched from composer in my moniker or whatever that means. I used to put question mark by composer in parentheses. Composer, and then now I put songwriter. That's what I am. I write 4 bar, 8 bar, 16 bar compositions are this. I
Mm.
write, but my point is to get people to improvise.
Right.
So that's what we do. So if we create an environment for people to improvise, Dave Douglas, everybody's very aware of, one of our greatest artists. I remember having a conversation with him at Birdland one night. I saw his band with Linda O, Rudy Royston, John Irabagon, and Matt Mitchell. And he goes, you know what? I read all of his music, and he goes, I have this 3 bar tune, 3 bars that gets more music every night than all these other things that I write. I was like, well, I mean, I thought to myself, that can happen, right? So whatever opens that door, that's what we're doing.
Mhm.
And it can be 9 bars, it can be 2 bars, it can be 3 notes. There was a great Lester Bowie composition years ago called Boo Dop Boo. It was called Boo Dop, and it was those 2 notes, Boo Dop Boo Dop, and all of his music emerged.
Mm.
So something magical about that.
Yeah. That's so cool. I'm trying to write a bunch of tunes this month, so I'm gonna make it my challenge to approach some things that way and not always feel like I have to do such a full-fledged
Yeah,
deal.
create your own deadline. Just say,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, I do this on planes. Well, when we can fly, but spirit songs, whatever. Just create, or like write a book of blueses. I have a book of blueses now. I've written a bunch of blues tunes. Some of them are terrible. They're terrible, but at least they're blueses. Terrible blues. It's all right. One of the things that I when I do workshops, I say to the students after I get to know them, I say, okay, tomorrow, come in. I want you to write the worst song ever. Because we're all like, I got to write the best song. I want you to play the worst solo. And then I also want you to play, write. I want to have, I mean, we should have a contest for the worst compositions ever. Then that might liberate us a lot more sometimes. Oh, we got to do this whole channel, you know, just come up with something. And, and Paul Motion said this once, and I said this to a student the other day. You're born with one song and you write the same one over and over again. And that's why we know Ron Miles. That's why we know all these people because we hear them in their music. That's Count Basie. We know it's Count Basie and not Duke Ellington. We know it's Dizzy Gillespie and not Junior Mance, or speaking of Junior Mance, but all these people. So the honesty aspect of it, with my dear friend John Clayton says, honesty and clarity. If you add that, if you have that in whatever you do, it's a great thing. So
Well, that kind of leads nicely into a question that Colin asked beforehand about if you could talk a little bit about Paul Motion and his influence, and if you have any stories you could share.
well, the first time I ever met Paul Motion was at the Village Vanguard in 1980, would have been 88. And so we came down from Boston with some friends of ours to see to visit New York. And it was a crazy period in New York, where if you had out of state plates, you were really scared about parking your car. And so we drove to New Haven and got on the train. I don't know why we did this, but that's what we did. So we were down in New York. It might have been 89, actually. Went to Village Vanguard to hear the Liberation Music Orchestra. And it was, I could name the whole band that night. It was Charlie, obviously, and Paul, Mick Goodrick, Ray Anderson, Tom Harrell, Earl Gardner, Branford, Maconda, Ken McIntyre, Dewey. First time I heard Dewey, and Amina, Claudine Myers. And so we were sitting as close to the drums as possible, on the corner. If you've ever been to the Village Vanguard, there's these benches along the wall right next to the drums. So we were sitting there, and my two friends, and Felice and I, and a couple came in and said they kind of moved around us. They said, "Could we get by you to sit closer?" We're like, "Yeah, go ahead." So they sit there closer, and so they're Paul's sitting there talking to Mick Goodrick, who I knew from Boston, a great guitarist, and they said to Paul, they said, "Excuse me, can we sit here?" He goes, "Yeah, fine, if you don't smoke, because you can smoke in the club spec." Yeah, we don't smoke. They said, "Oh, great." So they're sitting there for a little while longer. And they said, "Excuse me, sir." He goes, "Yeah, what is it?" He goes, "Will we ever, can we hear the band if we're sitting right here?" He goes, "No, because I'm a really loud drummer." And they got up and they practically crawled over the tables to go somewhere else. And he just cracked up laughing. I never forget. Not, he wasn't that loud. It was great. But I just think he was just messing with them. But that was one of the first stories. And then years later, I mean, I got to know him. And I was always really intimidated by him. And Lee Conus would always say, "Why are you so intimidated?" I said, "I don't know. If he says something first, I will always speak. But if I have to make the conversation, wow." So one time I went to hear him with my dear friend, Frank Kimbrough, who just passed. We had a memorial service for him yesterday at Juilliard. It was really beautiful. And my brother was in town. My brother was a big fan of Paul Motion. And so we went to see Frank with Jay Anderson and Frank at Birdland. And so Paul came and sat with us at the whole break. I was freaking out, but my brother was just like, "Wow, Paul Motion was sitting here. This is great." We're like checking this whole thing out. But then one time I went with Lee down to the Village Vanguard to hear Paul with certain things. And he goes, Matt Wilson, right?" And he goes, "Matt Wilson, you're a trombone player, right?" And I was like, and he just started laughing. So I never knew what you were gonna, kind of never knew what you were gonna get. So he was amazing. And I see my buddy Jeff Hamilton on. You know, we're all just looking for characters of the music. He was a character of the music. He was a real character. And I can't wait to see this documentary that's about him, that's out right now. And he was one night I remember one night we were playing a benefit concert at Jazz and Lincoln Center. It was right around the time Dennis Irwin was sick and then passed, but it was the day that he died, March 8th of 2008. And it was a big night. And Kenny Washington had never met him before. I introduced him to Paul. That night, I introduced Bill Frisell. He had never met Wynton before, ever. And now they're, collaborating. So, but I had to go out. I went out and played a set with Mose Allison. And if you guys ever know anything about playing with Mose, there's a lot of rules, This, you can't play the hi-hat. You can't do, you don't play brushes. Don't do. So I went out played the set with Ratso Harris was really great to help me through. And I got back and and Paul put his hand on my leg. Good job. That's a real challenge. That's that gig sometimes. And he goes, "Can I go out and play your cymbals?" I said, "Yeah. I mean, you can have them." I said, "I really don't." And he called, and Frank Kimbrough called me the next day. He said, "Paul called me this morning." He said, "Man, that Matt Wilson's a really nice guy, man. He said I could have his cymbals. He didn't really care." It's Paul Moshe. No, it was great. So every time I got to experience him, it was a gift. So
Wow.
there's a lot of stories about Paul, but yeah, but characters like Jeff. I mean, everybody, like people that who that Colin, everybody. Be who you are. Paul Romaine is who he is. We know. We have to be. We have to learn the history. We have to know all this, but to know who you are is a real good. The real benefit of this whole act. This activity. So
Do you have any advice for young musicians about maybe who aren't sure of their voice yet or are struggling to find a way to, find their voice amongst everything they're studying? Do you have any tips or could you talk about how you developed your own voice?
I think it's two things: remain really um, thoughtful, like remain really like thinking, and also remain equally ignorant. It's the only way. I mean, if you're really, you want to be thinking about what you do. You really want to be smart, but at the same time, if you're only that all the time, you're not going to welcome anything new.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, at this, and also don't lose that. I mean, every time I sit and think about why I love to do this, I just shut my eyes and think about, man, I think about Mr. Belson, or I think about seeing that concert of Dizzy's, or I think about, the enthusiasm they had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that night, like Dizzy, I can still see what the stage looked like. And I was, and even Miles, when I saw Miles, it was like he had a vibe that night. He was enthusiastic. At one point, he moved to the side of the concert, of the proscenium of the hall, and he put his glasses down and he talked into his trumpet. And he went, "Busted," and the place just went nuts. He just said one word, and the place went nuts. So, yeah, that search all the time for what gratifies you. I mean, history is important. I mean, I love it. I mean, anthropology is one of the keys, but it's still about who we are and what we want to offer. And Herbie Hancock said this in an interview, and I love this. He said, "We don't remember people that followed the rules."
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and I think that can be taken a lot of different ways. You don't have to be, there's a lot of people that have done this and still keep traditions alive and move it. And also, I think it's all part of the ecosystem of art. We want to have traditionalists, so we want to have people that are moving forward. It's not about judgment at all. We need to have all this happening at once to keep to keep this any kind of art form alive. We have to have all that happening at once. So respect, and anybody that puts the time in, I'm down with, that cares about it so much that they're willing to just, you know, practice, work on it, think about it, study it, read about it, whatever it has to be. That's legitimate. I mean, that's way beyond what we can ask for all the time as
Mm-hmm.
artists. So,
I think that's amazing advice. It's advice I need to hear,
well,
here and
yeah.
there. You forget.
It's Anthony Braxton. He talks about that. He's like, there's people that have moved things forward. There's people that keep it alive, and there are traditions. He said he's the one of the first people that said this. This all has to happen at the same time. If
Mm-hmm.
everybody's moving it forward, then what's that? If everybody's keeping the same, then what's that? Then if everybody, it's all of this happening at once. That's why I love it when people, they're so down with whatever they do. It's great, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do a lot of things at once. Some people can do all those categories,
Yeah.
Colin, Jeff Hamilton, people moving it forward and people keeping it alive for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
Ron Miles. I mean, there's somebody right there.
Yeah.
So you know, we want to gain inspiration from every moment that we can gather. You know,
Mhm.
it's great.
I also wanted to ask you, Matt, about maybe do you feel like your role shifts whether you're the band leader or a sideman? If you could talk about how you approach each situation, or if it's kind of all the same.
Yeah, the leader thing is, I mean, everybody who's the leader, you're thinking about different things, right? First of all, you're thinking about, am I doing everything for these people? Um, you know, you get the a week out from a gig somewhere, and uh, we don't have enough ticket sales. How are you going to get people here? I don't live in your time. You know, I mean, there's responsibilities, right? And so I think I've been able to learn to balance it. To I think one of the greatest ways to be a great side person is to be a leader, and the great way to be a leader is to be a good side person. So I think there's that. You know, I think of. I always use the Bill Clinton, the great presidential quote. I feel your pain. You know, I mean, I say this to people all the time. I know what it's like when you see a leader. You're like, okay, I know. So I try to I try to balance that as much as I can. And I Dewey Redman gave me one of the greatest pieces of advice for band leading ever, which was find the people that you love to play with and pick the songs and let them play them.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the, you know, if you have to really direct people how to play the music, then maybe you haven't chosen the right people, and vice versa. So, and I've heard the same thing about Wayne Shorter, for example. I heard that when you ask Wayne Shorter, I don't refer to him as the first person because I don't, but Mr. Shorter, a question about how to play a part, you're kind of on your way out. He assumes that you know what to do.
Mhm.
So when I hear great musicians that just know what to do, you know, I also just welcome it, like, wow, that's what you're doing. And so many of us have bands, and this is jazz. You know, this is jazz economics, as my good friend Kirk Kneffy says. So sometimes we have people sub or be, I call them guests. I don't call them subs. And so I never really say, oh, here's the music. If they really want to be aware of it, they're going to know what that music is. One of my greatest pieces of advice I've ever gotten years ago is if you want to play with somebody, and that came from Jeff Hamilton, was learn their music. So if you learn their music, you're going to be able to be yourself and be part of that band, right? So I learned that like from him a long time ago. So same way with my, you know, I don't say, oh, I had someone sub one time in Arts and Crafts, my band with Terrell Stafford and Larry Goldings, and now Gary Versace, and previously the great Dennis Irwin, late, and now Martin Wynn, obviously great too. And I had a certain person sub on a tour, and I think that person wanted to be Larry Goldings, and it was never going to happen.
Mhm.
I didn't send the music and say, "Be check out these." I said, "Just listen to it, be yourself," and and I think I think that's something I want, and it woke us up when somebody else comes in and plays the way they're going to play. They're going to wake us up to react to the music differently. So I'm not looking for somebody to be somebody else. I'm looking for them to be them. I ask them to do it because I know what they can do.
Mhm.
So just play the music the way you play it, and we'll react to you. You know? So
Yeah, this is all these interviews are cool because I always need to hear this stuff, you know? It's like always when I've been contemplating these things and then whoever I'm interviewing says exactly what I need to hear. It's so cool.
you know,
Just
Winston said yesterday. He goes, man, my time was sad. It was great in this interview yesterday. He goes, I was playing with Billy Higgins, and he goes, my time was sad. He goes, and Billy Higgins said, listen, man, don't adjust your time to me. I'll make you sound better. We all just laughed. You know, he went to the left. He's like, man, what a great piece of advice. He goes, yeah, you don't. He goes, just trust me. I'll help you sound better. If everybody on the screen could just help everybody else sound better, which many of you guys do from all instruments, then that's the vibe, right? We can
Yeah.
just help everybody else sound better. But I just thought that was great when he said that yesterday. What a
Hmm.
great piece of advice, you know? You know, what are you going to do to help everybody else sound better?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I kind of want to check out some of these questions we got beforehand and then some that people here might have. One that I thought was interesting that someone asked on our Instagram um, was about how a bunch of content is now being made at home, obviously. And the question was, do you think that virtual events and live streaming will and should remain constant, like even as we transition back into normal normal life?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, look at this aspect. A year ago, would we think about we'd be doing some sort of event like this? I think it's great. Things
Hmm.
I've seen with everybody. Jeff, I mean, I came on to one of these interviews with Ron, months back and said, "Wow, this is really great.
Hmm.
Hear people's stories more." I mean, this life is stories.
Yeah.
You all have stories. Donna, Paul, Larry, Andy, BK, everybody, you know, Deborah, and Colin, everybody on this, Josh, my student from the San Francisco, Andy, we all have stories. Ron Miles, he definitely has a story. Maxwell, he has a story. So we've gotten to hear people's stories more.
Hmm.
Look how many stories we've gotten. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's what life's all about. I mean, that's why I say to people about education. You can get the information from anywhere. It's all right here.
Hmm.
The information, but the stories that Jeff has told me about playing with Ray and playing with Monty and playing with, I mean, jeez, we can't. That's not on the phone. That's not on the phone. So
Hmm.
stories. So if we can get stories more, and that's why I've been writing down these stories, and even stories about childhood, about crazy stuff or whatever. But I mean, I think stories are really one of the keys. So I think, oh, by all means, it's one of the it's going to be a definite part of it, and that's how evolution happens. Is not by we don't determine it.
Hmm.
We never determine any of this. It's all by circumstances, and so art is moved by all of that. So
Hmm.
now that's what we have to realize. So I think teaching is better because of this. Actually, I think teaching is way better because of this, because people cannot just go to and check in and go, oh, here's your lesson, or here's your class, here's your syllabus, because the teachers have to go, how in the hell am I going to do this now? How am I
Right.
going to teach this ensemble? How am I going to teach an all-state Kansas jazz band online? I had to figure it out. I couldn't be like, oh yeah, I go in, I had to figure out how the hell to do this. So I think it's opened up inspiration for all of us. So I think it's yeah, it's going to help. It has to help,
Yeah,
and we have to welcome it in any way that we can.
I
So
agree. I mean, look at this crowd right
yeah,
now. It's so cool. We're all in this
yeah,
little virtual
yeah.
space.
Yeah, and we've done stuff like this. I mean, I had Jeff come on and talk to my students, and from all the schools. I brought them together, and it was great. And we've had, yeah. I mean, I think it's another way. I mean, I was scared. I mean, people said to me before, "What about Skype lessons and all this?" I'm like, yeah, I don't really want. No, I'm like, yeah, it's all cool. It's another possibility. And
Mhm.
I know now, I mean, I've done these interviews this week, like I mentioned earlier, with students for coming into the new school as far as the jazz and contemporary music program, and also with Manus. And so I've spoken with students from the Philippines and China and Korea, and they're all wanting the same. They just want that. They want stories. They want stories are what creates people.
Mhm.
I mean, the information, notes, notes are rhythms, notes, all that, but stories behind those. That's
Yeah,
what we want to hear. You know.
definitely. There's a
So
cool question in the chat from BK for Matt and Jeff if he wants to speak to it.
yeah, please.
BK asks, "What was the impact of John von Ohlen on your playing?"
Well, I have a great story to tell. I My late wife was a great violinist, and she was when she was graduating from Wichita State. She was thinking about graduate school. One of the schools was the conservatory at Cincinnati. So she went to visit the school, and she saw the Bluest Big Band. She was like, "Oh man, you got to check this cat out, John Von Holden." I said, "I know." I mean, we talked about it. She goes, "Oh, this guy's great." And so, I've heard, I knew about him through Jeff and everybody. But in 2013, I have a mentor in my dear friend Jeff Hamilton. Um, I was in residence at that school, and so Jeff's mother's birthday was at the same time. So he flew in early, and we went to see John Bon Olin the same night. So if I'm going to see John Bon Olin, I'm going to see it with my connection to, which was, I mean, this is one of these like life experiences. So we're sitting near each other, like at this. It wasn't the Blue Wisp, but it was another place. So we're sitting next to each other, pretty close in front of the band. And every time I look at Jeff, he would look over at me and go, "Scope." I go, and then we'd watch John for a while longer. And I'd look over at Jeff and he'd go, I'd go. And, as much as I'm, if not the number one fan, but if one of the number one fans of Jeff Hamilton, he sat in that night, valiant, you think, but man, John Von Olin, man. I mean, it was just whatever he just talks about it, like and the teaching concepts too that I get from Jeff's stories about him. So that's my aspect of it, which was that one night. But sometimes, you know what? One night can be really what it is. You can have 50 nights that are like, I didn't really pay attention, or that one night. And so I learned that from Wichita because when Art Blakey came to town with the Messengers, we really watched Art Blakey. We didn't kind of like blow it off. We gave it 300%, not 50%. So I the same way that night with John, with Jeff. That was one of my, if I, that was one of my favorite moments. But just looking over, I mean, you're sitting right next to me, like a hammer. He just go, we were like, and he would just do the flail. It was like, oh, damn. And then remember that night, Jeff too. He was like suggesting some food on the menu. We're like, oh yeah, we'll try it. He's like, oh, Jefferson, you must try the pasta with the whatever. We're like, yeah, we'll try it. We're like, ugh. It was great. That was a great night, man. I'll never forget that. That's jazz history right there. Speak a little. You should speak about John because he's another one of those kind of cats that's just
Well, John Von Olin turned me around because he didn't grow up with rudimental drumming, and I did. So when I went to study with him, I left Indiana University to study with John Von Olin after 2 years and he said, "Well, play for me," and I blew the windows out, yada da 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 da, crash. And I looked around at him, and he goes, "Well, I don't know what the hell that was, but it was impressive." It was like, "Oh, I'm over his head," at 19, I'm over his head. And he said, "What do you want from me?" And I said, "Well, like Matt did with the hand." I said, "Well, your time feel and your looseness and your sound." And he said, "Well, then get up." And I got up from the drums, and he just played the ride cymbal with just his right hand, and my knees buckled, and I couldn't handle it. And so I said, "That's what I want." And he said, "Well, you're going to have to throw away all that other crap then, because I don't know what that was." And 8 months later, I turned from a Buddy Rich wannabe to being on the Tommy Dorsey band at 20 years old because of John Von Olin. I mean, he speaks truth. He straightened me right out, and it's all about relaxation. Things like, I sent a student to him once, and I said, have 20 questions ready for him because he thinks he's not a good teacher. Every answer was, he said, "So what do you think about when you're playing time?" And John says, "Well, I think about when and where the stick is going to hit the cymbal." Okay. What do you think about when you're trading fours or setting up big band fills? Well, I'd have to say, I think about where or when the stick is going to hit the cymbal. It was the same answer for every question. Finally, he folded the piece of paper, said, "Okay." He said, "That was one of the greatest lessons I've had in my life. Just simplicity. And like we've been saying, be yourself and apply yourself to the music and offer it to everybody in the band. Offer what you have and play to make everybody else sound great." That was such a great thing. You know Roy Haynes line, Matt?
yeah.
That's a great line in keeping with what we're talking about. So, but thanks for including me. That's all I got. Back to the matter here.
No, it's great, right? I mean, anthropology. This is beyond like the room of the practice room. You have to like Paul. I was checking out this thing with Paul with Brad the other day too, and the great hang we had in Reno a couple years ago. Paul in the hallway for like 3 hours
It
in
was
two
just so.
chairs,
Yeah, it was
just like
just the two chairs in a hallway, man.
yeah, like this little stupid hallway at Reno,
Just
whatever
fully.
that damn place was that we're at. Come on, just like man, like life, like bring this stuff to it. Transcriptions, notes, all that. I know, but we have to have that too. So again, it's all ecosystem. You just have to balance. Some days we're going to nerd out. I told Josh tonight, a student of mine. Some days we're going to nerd out on stick control or whatever it is. That's cool too. And that's where we think, oh man, this music. So we have to know what the intent is for. And I've been blessed to be, welcomed into these places where I actually been, fortunate to have uh, great guides and guidances that help me with mechanics of the instrument and my imagination. That's what people have to look for. And sometimes you can find the person that's both. But sometimes it's the guy that goes, the person, not guy, I mean guy, I mean guy, that's everything. But it might be the person that goes, I don't care what kind of music you play. This is the trumpet. You got to get this together here. And sometimes it can be, wow, the John Von Owen, for me, Bob Moses, or whomever, that just opened me up to a lot of different kinds of possibilities. I had a teacher in college, J.C. Combs, who's a dear friend of Jeff's and I both. Was he a drum set player? Not really. He was he was an artist, man. He still is, and he was one of the most. He is no. I'm not gonna say he's one of the most. He's the most creative person I've ever met. He's the most imaginative person I've ever met. We did pieces in college for percussion ensemble and professional wrestlers. Who the hell figures that shit out? So, imagination. What you do with it is something. Luckily, we have people like Jeff who does, and Colin, and Ron, all these people, Paul, that do both. They have the tradition, but we know who they are. We know who these people are. Who are they? We
Yeah.
know who they are. I can hear Jeff, and I know how Jeff sounds. Jeff does this thing with the cymbal this way, and I hear this record that they played too much on the radio a few years ago with Graham Deckers. No, I love the record, but I can tell. I know when he was playing the rotary cymbal. I can tell. I know. I can hear it. I can hear when he's playing that way. Because it's his imagination. So, he's taken something. So I think there's something about being. I don't think people wake up and go, like tomorrow, it's a snowstorm here. Pick up milk. Well, no, do this. Be an innovator. I don't think anybody does that. They just welcome it, right? And sometimes innovators are the people that have no idea that they're doing that at all. I didn't, just who you are. I didn't know any better, and I learned from all these people just to be like. At the same time, you want to serve the music and offer it the best you can. Offer the beat the best you can. There's still something about a swinging time feel. 4/4. It's a great thing. So.
Yeah. Wow. It's really, really been an honor to talk to you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Camila. Yesterday, the last few days, I've invited guests to be on, like I said, this Kansas All-State Band. Don Clement, again, one of your, great citizens of Colorado. Nick Dunstan, yesterday, Winton. Come on. I was writing notes down like crazy. And I said to these young people, this is great to get this kind of inspiration. And you never know when you walk down the street or you walking, well, now it's a little limited. You never know when somebody's going to say something to you that is going to change your life.
Mm-hmm.
You always have to be welcome for those moments. So if you're relaxed enough to be open to those moments, You're gonna be welcome to your artistry. You'll be welcome to whatever you do at all times. You know, I mean, I was on a plane once with Eddie Gomez to go out and do the Brubeck Colony, and we got on this plane. We're sitting next to this guy. I'm in the middle seat. I gave Eddie the aisle seat. You know, good guy. So I was in the middle. This guy sitting next to me. We were watching the screens on JetBlue, I guess it was, to get Sacramento, and we're talking about music, and this guy goes, "Hey, you know, I noticed you're talking a lot about music." Yeah, I said, "Yeah, we're going out to the Brubeck." Yeah, he goes, "I like music. He goes, I like the blues. You know, I like it." Oh, great. I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "Well, I'm in race cars." You know, he goes, "I, I, you know, I've repaired, I service them, I've raced them, I've done all this stuff." He goes, I said, "Wow, that's really cool." And he goes, and he said at one point, he goes, "You know what?" We introduced each other, and he said, "Matt, you know," he goes, there are race car owners and there are race car drivers." And I said, "You know what? Would you come and speak to us this week?" Because I thought it was so great that he had this kind of insight. So, some people ask me what one of my favorite hobbies, and one of it is to speak to people on airplanes because I never know who I'm going to meet. And so I know some people are like, "Oh God, I don't want to talk to somebody," but you never know who you're going to meet when you just talk to somebody and find out what they're interested in. You know, I mean, every day you never know. Today in my backyard, man, my kids and I were just freaking out because we had this sharp-shinned hawk come back, and every bird just split my backyard. You know, so I've gotten into birds during the pandemic. It's been a thing. So man, I looked out, and there was no birds, and I saw this bird, and he was just. So I called the kids, and Audrey got a great video from upstairs of this bird, and there was no bird in sight, but there were these birds in this small bush hiding from this hawk. We're like, "Wow, check this out." So we were all just, and my kids said, "A year ago, we would have never thought about it." So there again, you know, I've gotten into birds. You know, it's like a bit crazy to check out. Sharp shin hawk a year ago. Never know. Right?
Hey,
So
hey
now I
Matt.
know.
Hey Matt,
Yeah.
did you ever watch like do you ever watch those online bird feeders? You know that are
Oh yeah.
like they
Yeah.
have one in South Africa that you know where you watch and it gets it's dawn and you know there's all these little birds hanging out and then this one big one just you know and everybody
Yeah.
splits. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's great. But lately, man, I'm like, it's not. And so we had a little bit of crime scene in the backyard. I actually took some pictures, like crime scene. I'm like, oh, now I know why it's not happening because somebody went to town. So I mean, you know, I mean, not to be dark, but I'm just saying, like, you know, just learning things and like checking things out is, you know, like curiosity. I think is one of the greatest things ever. So somebody like even, you know, even Hammer, you know, setting his no, he's not setting his ways, but he's curious. You know, he's like, oh, we're always talking about stuff all the time, man. You know, and if we can keep that kind of energy up, that's great. And
Yeah.
so, curiosity, curiosity, and imagination. It's one of the
I
greatest.
sent that hawk to your house.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Audrey was freaking because she was upstairs. She got the video, and she said, "Wow, he was looking right at me," or whatever. And she was like really kind of startled. You know, it was you know, great day. So it's great
Wow.
to check it out. I'd like to thank you guys and for everything you do for this music, for imaginations, and for young people in your area because you know we see this all the time, and you know the best people come from these areas where there's this kind of energy and devotion to imagination to creativity at younger ages. Man, that's what's great. Sometimes college is like, wow, maybe even whatever after this. So what you guys do, what other people do in the other parts of the country is great for this. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, you know, for what you offer the world through you guys, your program. So Paul, you know, for starting
Man,
this whole thing, everybody. So it's great.
thanks for making the hang too. Man.
Oh,
This is always so joyful and inspirational.
from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. So
Thank you, Matt.